Ubuntu is an old African philosophy, and its basis is that I am because we are. It's an idea that the individual actually isn't the primary element in society. The primary element is social relationships, and it's a very nice. It has lots of echoes across bits of social psychology, across bits of philosophy, across bits of religion, and it's talking about the interrelatedness of us as social beings. And one of the things that I draw on a lot is a social psychology that says we are motivated as much by our relationships to other people as we are by our simple individual needs. And actually creating the task is really to create an economy which reflects that feature of the human psyche, which supports our social motivations, which supports our altruism, for example, which supports our ideas of other regarding behavior, that draws the circle around people in a way that includes their relationships to others. And it's an idea that's not just nice, rosy, philosophical in nature. It's actually an idea that you can apply to economic institutions. You can build economic institutions that, in a way that instead of incentivizing selfish, individualistic behavior, incentivizes social behaviors and social relationships. And that's the core of my argument, in a sense, is that we have to make those institutional changes. Well, what is the iron cage? It's a set of incentives. It's a set of conditions that really forces us to go on being consumers. So we are encouraged to consume by advertisers. We're encouraged by being offered cheap, what looks like in the beginning looks like cheap credit for borrowing more money. We're encouraged to draw down our savings, and we're also this set of institutional incentives reinforces a set of human motivations, a set of human attitudes, which is destructive. And it's not so much that to have selfish motivations as a human being is wrong. It would be silly to say that, because we've evolved in a certain way, and it's quite clear that we do have some selfish motivations. But it becomes a cage when all of the institutional structures reinforce this particular attitude of us as human beings, when all of the economic incentives encourage us to buy more stuff to prove ourselves as human beings, and where, for example, we consistently devalue the activities that might be more supportive of a more sustainable economy. So we devalue the people who care workers, very poorly paid, health officials in some cases very poorly paid, education consistently struggling against incentives that undermine the value of people as educators. And so it becomes an iron cage, really, not because of who we are as human beings, but because of the institutions that we created to support this kind of economy. You know, for 20 years or more, I was engaged in these debates about protecting ecological resources, about reducing climate change emissions, about negotiating these treaties to impose targets on carbon reduction, for example. And over again, I think what trumps these arguments is the question of economic growth. It's a belief amongst those who are trying to negotiate, or amongst the ones that we're trying to persuade, that this kind of change will hurt economic growth. And so the industries themselves resist, and they go to governments and they say, if you enact this climate change legislation, you will hit the fossil fuel lobby. The fossil fuel lobby is important because it employs a third of, it's not anything like a third, but a percentage of your population, and it reproduces for you all of these revenues and all of these benefits. And so, and governments and politicians have listened to these arguments, and they've listened to them because in a system based on growth, it matters when things happen that challenge that system of growth. And so my argument is that really, my sense of being involved in it for 20 years is that we haven't made the headway that we should have made because the continual response is, but this will hurt the growth of the economy. And it's no longer sufficient to say, well, it might hurt it, but it won't hurt it too much. It's no longer sufficient to say, if you keep technological efficiency going, you can have your growth-based economy and still meet your carbon targets, because these things are just not working. And so this is a point where you say, the politics hasn't worked, the environmental lobby hasn't worked, the economics hasn't worked. This is a point at which you actually have to begin to redesign basic features of the economy. And at the heart of that is this allegiance to growth.